Hello, everyone, and welcome to our World Trade Center Denver Food and Beverage Industry event today. We have an amazing panel, and we're looking forward to enlightening, engaging, and entertaining you surrounding the food and bev industry and what's going on today. The World Trade Center Denver is an organization that has membership, classes, trainings, and these fantastic events. Thank you for everyone for joining in the audience today. And thank you to Brandon Hernandez for moderating the panel from Naturally Boulder. Brandon, I'll pass the mic over to you.
Catherine, thank you so much. Good morning or afternoon to everybody out there, depending on where you are in the world. I am Brandon Hernandez. I am a board member of Naturally Boulder as well as the Naturally Network. I'm also the co-founder of Whole Brain Consulting, which is an outsourced operations firm in the food industry, focusing on QA/QC, supply chain, and co-man source and selection. And I can't be more excited to be here today. This is going to be a great panel with great panelists. I really hoping people are able to take something away from today. Just a little housekeeping. As stated, there is a little Q&A function that I'll be looking into. So as you have questions, please dump those in that box there, and I'll do my best during that part of the session to bring those to the panelists. But enough about me, enough about all of this. I'd like to kick it off by having the panel introduce themselves. And first, we'd like to start with Zach Frederick.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it. I own Frederick Export in Littleton, Colorado, and we are an import-export company. We handle international sales for major food brands. Past and present brands include Unilever, Kellogg's, Cliff Bar, Noon Hydration. We work for a great homegrown Colorado brand called Bubba's Fine Foods. And we look after all of their international sales and entry into foreign markets. And we also import a couple challenger brands from overseas and sell those to US retailers. Happy to be here today.
Thank you for being here, Noelle.
Hi, my name's Noelle Julian, and I work for Danone, known as Dannon Yogurt in the United States. The home office is in France, so they go under the name Danone. I work in the customer experience department, and you'll recognize some of our brands as Silk Soy Milk. We have Horizon Organic Dairy, International Delight Coffee Creamers, Danimals, So Delicious, Light and Fit, Oikos, Wallaby, and then Happy Family, and we have newly acquired a plant-based cheese and mayonnaise company called Follow Your Heart. All right, back to you, Brandon.
Thank you so much for being here. And last, certainly not least, Chris Wheel.
Hi, yeah, everyone. I'm Chris Weil, and great to be here. I work for a company called Food Match, and we run the Divina brand. I'm based here in Denver, Colorado. For those unfamiliar with Food Match, we're experts in producing and importing Mediterranean specialty foods with a focus of olives and antipasti products and ingredients for retail, food service, and manufacturing. Our products are great tasting, responsibly produced, authentic foods that embrace sustainability and product quality, produced in over 15 countries, and offer over 500 different products for those different channels. Excited to be here today and talk to you about some of the challenges for the food and beverage industry. Additionally, I do participate here in the Colorado food and beverage community on the Colorado Restaurant Association Board of Directors, who's also been a great asset to so many small businesses and operators here in the Colorado market. Great resource for small business operators here in the Colorado. Check them out at corestaurant.org if you need some help. So thanks for being here.
All right, great. Well, thank you all so much again for being here and taking time out of your busy days. And just to get right into it so we can get to the education piece of this, when we were talking in the pre-flight meetings and things, we talked about just from a holistic supply chain perspective, what really were some of the more valuable lessons or pain points that caused pivots over the last 365 plus days that maybe you could talk about here. And Not to pick on him first, but Chris, I'm going to pick on you first. So whatever you can, please.
Thanks, Brandon. I do think it's fitting. A year ago today, I was on an airplane like many of you coming home to not sure what was going to happen in the next, 7 to 14 days. And, as lockdowns ensued just about this time last year. And, I think a couple things that, I take away from our leadership team, we started 2020 with the idea of like creativity and like how we were going to find new customers and new channels and stuff like that. And it was interesting how that word evolved in their conversations as the new challenges presented itself. And I think looking at the supply chain as we've gone into lockdowns and come out and been in this hibernation state for a year or so has just been a little bit of a be prepared model of how much longer is product going to take. And the biggest takeaway is forecasting and some of those parts, everything just takes longer. Getting products to the facility to be made, having containers to be there, to ship it onto the United States, making sure it's in the right packaging for the consumers who want to buy it, as different avenues did close up and still have not reopened, and obviously while maintaining the safety and sustainability of our team members and supplier partners out there in the market throughout that time. So really just that piece of just everything taking longer has been the biggest shift that we've seen and have taken on as part of this over the last year.
Got it. And Zach, from your client perspective, obviously you have a broad base. Is there some things some learnings maybe over the last year that you could speak to? Potentially.
Lots of learnings over the last year in many different areas, as you can imagine. But I would just say, first of all, it's great to be in the food business because we did a lot better than a lot of industries through this pandemic. People have to go on eating, grocery stores stayed open. So there were certainly categories that were hard hit, but in general, I think we're very happy to be in this business, and it proved itself to be relatively pandemic proof. So that's great. For supply chain, it's been a mess, and it's been very hard to plan for that. Freight costs are up significantly. There's major congestion at ports. And sometimes even if you plan really well, as Chris alluded to, there's nothing you can do about that. And a lot of your competitors are in the same boat. So I think one thing I would sort of take away from it is having enough room in your pricing and your value chain to be able to sustain those unexpected increase of input costs, and so that they're not reflecting the price of your product on shelf. And a lot of US companies, they're not always great about that. So that's something to think about. And one other thing worth considering is just currency. And currency has a massive impact on import and export, and that's been pretty volatile of late as well. So just the different things you can do to insulate your company from those impacts are worth looking into as well.
Great. So Noelle, do you have something you'd like to add here?
Well, first I want to call out, I'm working from home, so this is my son. This happens a lot to me, so that plays into, everybody being adaptable and flexible to whatever the year's going to throw at you, because I think we definitely weren't all expecting that. So I just say the word of the year for us is agility, being able to flex to not only new consumer demand, but work from home demands, family demands, and there was just so many changing parts that I really feel like everybody staying agile is really what got us through the year, and it'll continue into the future for us.
Great. Noelle, I'm going to keep you here, and we'll keep your extra guest too, because he's pretty fun to watch in the background. Something that we talked about again in the pre-flight, and I think is important for you to be able to speak to a little bit, is just how your sustainability has become a very big deal, and it should be in the industry in general. And I'm just curious, how has the last year's events really affected your ability to maintain your sustainability goals? And, you know, what potential pivots did you have to make to assure that those goals were met?
Yeah, that's a great question. And at Danone, we really operate under the motto of this idea about a food revolution. And we believe that global food and retail companies can play a really integral role in this revolution by moving away from like traditional food supply chains and concentrating on local first. And we believe that in order to have a healthy body, you have to have healthy food. And that was already our motto. We're actually the largest B Corporation, which balances profit and responsibility. And so it's a little different than just a regular corporation, because we really believe in the necessity to balance the proposition, I guess, the food of like making sure everybody has healthy food with profitability instead of taking one over the other. And so I think it really, if anything, just accelerated us towards all of our goals to reduce packaging, to have regenerative agriculture at the forefront of, you know, what we do on a daily basis. So if anything, I think it just accelerated all that to happen faster, and it showed us that we can do it all from wherever we are across the entire nation. And so I think that was an important thing that launched us into kind of the future of the work environment, is showing everybody that we can stick with all of our goals and we can make progress on all of those, no matter what setting we're in. So I think that would be how we kind of made sure we were maintaining our sustainability focus as a company.
Got it. Thank you. Zach and Chris, do you have any insights into that? And if not, that's perfectly okay.
No, I think, you know, as it relates to Food Match, you know, sustainability has been one of like the foundations our company was founded on, you know, the sustainability and biodiversity on all levels, you know, from our growers who respect the land they cultivate. This means, you know, like regular crop rotations, appropriate acreage and densities, and consistency in irrigation, and hands-on care for products. You know, I think through COVID, you know, has allowed a lot of companies opportunity to either cut corners or whatnot. And I think remaining steadfast and almost doubling down on that commitment for sustainable, you know, artisanally produced products, and almost, you know, finding ways to increase quality and packaging, you know, even better packaging to bring it to customers has been, you know, an event over the last year. And, you know, I think as Noel had mentioned, you know, some things also like got, you know, accelerated along the way in either like simple everyday things, you know, less use of paper, you know, within the office. Well, no one's in the office anymore. We're all working from home, and, you know, accelerated small things like that may have taken us longer to accomplish. And so, you know, remaining uncompromising to those quality and the sustainability approaches that we've had all along has almost doubled down during this time.
So what I would say is, just briefly, I think the biggest sustainability issue that doesn't get talked about enough in the food business is food waste. And a tremendous amount of product gets thrown away. And that, to me, is the ultimate sort of sustainability problem in our business. In an import and export, it can be especially dramatic because you have such a long supply chain. So for us, especially at a time like this, just making sure you've got a nice, healthy Rolodex full of clearance contacts, accounts that can buy stuff with short shelf life, move it quick on clearance, and get it to a customer that can actually use it. Because I think you'd all be shocked to know how much food gets thrown away, and that's really a shame and something we have to address.
Yeah, that's great, Zach. That reminds me of an initiative that Danone is partnering with the USDA for a program called Farmers to Families. And what it is the government is helping find the farmers, the manufacturers, and the families. And we're actually producing and filling food boxes to help the farmers, you know, because they were impacted by COVID, but also help the families in need. And so programs like that, that the government has kind of sponsored, I think are really showing how we can take what would have been waste and use it for something like a food bank donation or these farmers to families boxes, and really help out with what we already have.
Yeah, upcycling, I think, is going to be, it's bigger, it's getting big, and it's only getting bigger. And that's something that I think every brand's going to have an eye towards. But with respect to sort of pivoting to another part of the supply chain and just sort of forward looking, you know, obviously we know everything that happened this last year. We know all the pain points and things that we had to go through, but really forward looking, as we pivot back to an economy that, being out in restaurants, being able to get back out into the world, you know, they shifted away from the restaurant, they're shifting to more meals at home, they're shifting in all likelihood back to restaurants and things like that. So can you just talk a little bit how maybe that shift in dynamic affected you and your supply chains? And if they didn't, you know, maybe more of just as an operational practice, what sort of that pivot has done to your ability to forecast, to be able to fill supply chains, things of that nature.
Chris, you want to start?
Sure. You know, absolutely. You know, as people came, you know, running into grocery stores, you know, a year ago and vacating, you know, of food and beverage establishments through regulations and other things. The data, you know, currently does show, you know, that desire and that pent up demand for that culinary experience, or that shareable experiences with, like, you know, other people. I mean, humans were meant to be out and be social. And I think, you know, almost all of us are ready for a little bit of that. And as, you know, warmer weather and better information continues to be talked about, I think there's an optimistic approach, especially through, you know, food service distribution operators and local, you know, chains and restaurants in your community. You know, I think that joy of cooking, you know, did do some great things for brands. It allowed brands to have trial on so many different things that, you know, consumers, you know, may have grabbed your brand off the shelf that, you know, because it was the last one on the shelf. And now you have maybe a new customer that found a product that they didn't know they liked before. And so I think as we're coming out of that, you know, it's almost like a great promotion that you ran, you know, that big spike of that stock up last year. And now trying to see where that rise level, that lift level is going to sit, you know, on the retail side of things. But then as we're having a convergence of restaurants opening and retail opening, you know, a lot of our shift and our conversations have gone to, you know, almost demand planning, you know, and making sure how are we, you know, going to be well stocked to service that demand as people run, you know, to that next gathering. Or, you know, I know here in Colorado, you know, several are looking forward to like opening day at Coors Field, whether it's at 10%, 20% or whatever. But as those larger gatherings start coming, you know, how do we have the products and services to meet that demand? Do we still have the right packaging? You know, that, you know, we invented new packaging, you know, a year ago to meet that demand. Is that still the right packaging for those customers 3 months from now? And then, you know, again, that data sending people back into restaurants, you know, is exciting. But no one has a crystal ball. I think you still have several operators out there that, you know, want to just take their business a little bit one day at a time. You know, the regulations have thrown so many curveballs at them. You know, they're not going to say, sure, 100%, and people are going to be knocking down our doors at 100% tomorrow. You know, I think there's an optimistic outlook that will get us to a steady growth and consumer growth in that industry. But you know, so a lot of exciting things to come from that. So you know, Zach, Noel, if you've got some additions in restaurants as well that you're seeing.
Well, I think it looks like a lot of the people attending this class are probably dealing in consumer packaged goods, CPG, so branded products. which I'm assuming are by and large distributed through stores and not restaurants. So actually, the last year has been an absolute boon for brands like that. Many categories are experiencing astronomical growth. Ice cream, for example, that they would have never seen had things been as they were. So that's been good news. I would say the whole thing is just a reminder of having as diverse as possible of a customer base. So if you can sell in food service and in retail and in out of home or grab and go, you have the best chance of being insulated from some of these dramatic changes. I think the one massive change that we haven't talked about is the move toward e-commerce and people not buying things in stores, instead buying them online. And that has a big impact on exporters because now you have a lot more options to get your products in the hands of a foreign consumer outside of the traditional route of going through an importer. There's a lot you can do on Amazon globally to sell your product, and you don't even need an importer. So I think that's a major shift that the last year brought about that's worth thinking about as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know at one point in time, early on in the pandemic, we experienced like a 300% lift in Amazon orders, and we had to like double check. We're like, you really mean a million? You need a million cases of this? Like the numbers seemed so far out of our reach. But like I said before, we just are kind of getting propelled into the future of how consumers will behave because of this pandemic. And so the surge in e-commerce has we've actually restructured our customer service team to kind of have a focus on that e-commerce, because it's not just Amazon, it's the click and pick at all the grocery stores, at Target, at Walmart. And that's a little bit different model than we all have been used to up until now. So yeah, it definitely speaks to being agile and able to conform to your consumers and what their new demand is and how you flex to that. And as a CPG company that does play in a lot of spaces, we had to quickly react because our away from home business or grab and go, the coffee in the convenience stores and all that kind of stuff, that severely went down, whereas like in-home coffee consumption had completely the other uptick. So as a business, we kind of have to shuffle around and put the knowledge and the manpower behind what is selling, and then kind of be okay with flexing down on the production of some of our, away from home type products. So yeah, I just think the ability to play in multiple spaces and conform depending on what the market is asking of you is essential to success in this environment. But we see it in the future, well into the future too. We're not going to go back to exactly how we were pre-COVID, even if everything opens back up. I think for a long time after, we'll see these consumer behavior shifts towards different avenues, lasting a lot longer than one might expect.
And on that shift topic, through every kind of economic downturn, there's always a history of consumer behavior, seeking out, more optimization, like better products, better ingredients, better stuff, or new flavors. And so even looking at, those new trends that, have exploded through that trial at home, and what people are going to be looking for in that, culinary experience as they go back to restaurants or what they do with their friends at home will be exciting. And if, like you said, how they find your products online, big focus of putting, the right images that match current brand data, and even controlling that monster has almost been a full-time job for our marketing departments in some respect, because, you can, as you've had a brand for 25 years, things change and evolve, and you want to keep that brand presence accurate as possible on those e-commerce platforms as well.
And if I could make one more quick point, Brandon, I apologize. Last year, more than ever, emphasizes why American brands need to export, because we had booming business in Asia who handled the pandemic way better than we did as a country. So for the brands that we work with, if they happen to have a rough time in the US market, but they had booming business in Taiwan or, you name it, other parts of the world that have done better, then you've diversified your customer base. And that's one of the main benefits of exporting. So US companies sometimes aren't wired for export, but last year is a real reminder of why you should be.
And on that, just thinking about, you say perfect point that CPG or US based CPG doesn't put a lot of thought into making that pivot, because I think there is a move to sort of the world is flat, or there should be a move to a sort of the world is flat mentality when it comes to that. But can we expand on that a little bit, in that, obviously that's a pivot that somebody would have to make if they're not already doing it. Obviously they contact somebody like yourself, but what's sort of the way that they need to be thinking about that, and how they may ultimately feed into that ability to sort of flatten the earth a little bit?
So how to start going international?
I want to think about it.
Yeah, you call your good friend Karen at the World Trade Center, and then she tells you to call me. No, just kidding. I think it comes down to having somebody internally that knows how to build international distribution network, or partnering with a firm like ours, or there's many others like us that are good at it, to make export a little more accessible. Because for European producers, for instance, from day one, they're thinking about export. And for most American companies, it's an afterthought. So groups like the World Trade Center exist to address that and to get people started. So that's obviously a very good starting place. And then if they can't help, or they can only help up to a certain point, they'll refer you to somebody that can.
Thanks, Zach. And this is a good time for me to remind the audience that in addition to membership, we also have classes and trainings. For example, next week we have a training on e-commerce, and also a training on March 18th surrounding import logistics. So definitely don't forget to check out the calendar link in the chat to see how we can help you in your exporting and importing endeavors. And Brandon, I'll let you keep us going.
No problem. So Chris, I want to pivot back to you for just a minute, and that is, I think, well, and it could be, and it's open to everybody here, that obviously I think it would be beneficial for people to hear, sort of from the perspective of what was a pain point or a pain point that caused a pivot, and ultimately how was it that you were able to sort of bridge that gap and maintain I won't say business as usual, because there's been nothing usual about the last year, but sort of how did you maintain that just a standard business operation to make sure that your brand survived and continues to move into the future?
Again, it was kind of just the ability to that ability to pivot and see what the consumers, the biggest pain for us was a lot of our products were ingredients in restaurants, self-service products at your local retailer, whether it's an olive bar or salad bar that you frequent on a regular basis. And how that turned to really quickly be, needing to be in grab and go, needed to be packaged so it's clean and safe. And, we were able to come out with some packaging that could create that value and quality proposition that customers could, come back to that same spot where they found it, or now find that product that wouldn't show very well online, or on that click and pick example, from before where it was self-service, it's hard to kind of show what item you were getting. And now, and working with our partners to create that, that access to consumers was probably the biggest pivot in creating that new packaging that people wanted to find. We always knew people wanted our products, but were we packaging it in the right way? And then, then just some of the logistics supply, we had to get it made, get it boxed, get it packaged, get it shipped here to the US, port delays where, a couple weeks ago, there's 42 boats sitting outside of the Port of Long Beach. Again, is it going to be here on time to meet that demand? And then, of course, what's coming up next, and what is the new innovation flavors, and getting back to innovating flavors that people want to buy next is kind of the next step in some of this.
And Noel, was there any shift in standard operation that you maybe could speak to? I know could be supply chain, could be something operational. Is that sustainability? I know that was a big wheelhouse of yours. Is that something that you had to see?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we are a very large supply. We have a very large supply chain, I guess, at Dannon. And we have plants in a lot of different countries, or states, not countries. We have plants in countries too, but just in the Americas here, we have a lot of plants, some in Texas, some in the Northeast, some in California. And so before the pandemic, we had a pretty good cadence going on of the product was close to the customers that we needed it to be. We had a good flow going on. And what we saw was with this disruption is there's not only a disruption to the materials coming in, especially ones that were from different countries for packaging or anything like that, but also that we didn't have the right product in the right place. So we had to figure out how to rebalance that supply chain. And with so many different products and different flavors and SKUs, we really found, a grocery store on the East Coast was out of all of this product, but we had a surplus in, our California plant. So we had to do some crafty things logistically to get the product to the right place. And then we also had to take care of our own front workers, and so we decided that even though we wanted to be at full capacity to support the demand, we had to take down one of our lines and change it to make face masks, because that was more important to us, is the safety of not just our company, but being able to share that with the rest of the world was important to us. Health is at the forefront of what we're about. And so again, just really having open-minded leadership to be able to say, this might not be as profitable, but it's the right thing to do in the food industry. And so I think keeping that at the forefront of your decision-making is really what will make you successful.
Thank you. So I'm going to get to a Q&A a little early, only because there is a question that's come over multiple times. And I think Zach bringing it up a little earlier, there's a large amount of interest in what exactly is happening with currency and how to sort of set your pricing for international markets versus domestic ones. And so if you don't mind, I know you were kind enough to answer the question in the chat box, but maybe if you could expound for those that are maybe just listening, I think it's a topic of interest.
Sure. So the question was, when currency is volatile or fluctuating, excuse me, how do you set your pricing to accommodate for that? So what normally happens for US exporters, normally they're selling in US dollars, because the US dollar is still the world's reserve currency. Thank God. Let's hope it stays that way. And so most US exporters will set the pricing in US dollars. Your foreign buyer needs to build a value chain on that price. So they'll change it into their local currency. They will use a rate that has some padding built into it, so they know that if it slides, that they're going to be okay. And then they'll build the price accordingly. What I often see happening is seller and buyer agree to a price, and then they agree to an exchange rate to accompany that price. This is the rate today. This is what we're agreeing to the pricing on. And then they'll agree that the exchange rate can fluctuate plus or minus 5% within a band, and the price will stay the same. If it goes outside of that band, then seller and buyer both share in the upside or the downside of the movement accordingly. That's a very common way for smaller exporters to deal with it, that are selling in US dollars but want to keep their price on shelf consistent and mutually beneficial for both sides.
Great, thank you. And that's obviously that was a big question that came up. One question that did come up as well, I think I'll direct this at Chris a little bit, at least to start, which was, obviously you're an ingredient supplier to restaurants and into multiple locations. And I think one of the big questions, and that could be for all of you as well, because I know you all have customers to serve. But really, what were some of the changes and ways that you helped your customer bases, as they're meandering through all this, what sort of dynamics changed for you, and how did you help your customers through those dynamics?
Sure. Whether it's, retailers, looking at more packaged options from third-party commissaries or whatnot, and kind of almost that need for, either pre-prepared or delivery type products, or as labor tightened, that labor saving, chef ready type products really kind of came out in the forefront of, what options do we have for a, pre-julienne roasted red pepper strip, instead of something I was roasting myself, could I upgrade and find something ready made? On that side of things, from a very macro level, at like the operator level, but, distribution partners, how do we help you with your inventory that you're still over on? And how do we maybe, shift that back to another area that is working, so that we can kind of keep our supply or movement of our goods continuing to work, because it has been a foundation of those long-standing partnerships that have, helped us weather this storm. It's growers that have been doing it for 20 years that have kept the price of their crops for us at a reasonable level, so we don't have to adjust, pricing just because of the pandemic, or partners that have found agile ways to bring in factory workers to keep up with demand, or even buying new machinery to keep up with, the packaged good product. So those are just some of the things that we've been working on as that it relates to that.
I wanted to bring up some of the things that Danone has been doing, and this is more globally than locally, but we definitely have partnered with a few companies in developing countries to provide yogurt and healthy dairy products to children in those countries that are underserved or underprivileged, and really taking a lot of our profits and investing them in what we call a social business, which is a business for good, not a business for profit necessarily. And so buying into those types of ideas to support the entire world's economy. And then back here at home, partnering with finding more local food banks to donate to, or helping our grocery customers, in their time of need too, because, they're facing the same types of problems in their warehouses with labor shortages due to, illnesses and people calling off, and which just has a trickle down effect all the way down to the grocery store shelf. And so really, we spent a lot of time this year being flexible and finding other solutions to the problems that were newer to us this year than we have had in the past. Sometimes that looked like we have to deliver a load instead of the customer picking it up because they just don't have any trucks. Or, hey, we're out of all of our specialty SKUs. Can you just give us some International Delight French vanilla? That's the best selling SKU. People just want that. So shifting from, all we had been doing to market new flavors and get some specialty flavors into the grocery stores, we kind of had to pivot and flex to what do people need. We have to keep these essential items on the shelf to keep people fed. And so again, it's just being agile and flexible to the consumer demand, and then what their need is at that given time, and being able to kind of be open to investigating different ways of solving problems that we haven't thought of before. And I think it's just, like I said a couple times before, it's just propelling us into what is our new, our future, our new future. How are we going to work together going forward? And it just speaks to that.
Great, thank you. Zach, did you have some insight into this one?
I think Chris and Noel put it very well, actually. We can go to the next question.
Fair enough. I think, I think it's really easy to get caught in the what went so wrong this last year. How did this negative thing impact you, and how did you pivot from it? And I think I really would like to give you all an opportunity to use this as a moment to kind of toot your own horn. What major success can you point to that said, hey, this last 365, I got this 100, I got this right. And I didn't need no pandemic, no consumer behavior, none of that. Just I was able to get that right. And then ultimately for those smaller brands, because there are a few of them out in the audience here, what ultimate suggestion can you give them? I mean, obviously it's easy to just think it's easy to get down in the mouth and get discouraged. Maybe some words of encouragement and some things that smaller brands need to be thinking about, because I think one of the key factors that we hit here that we haven't been able to discuss, there's probably a whole panel on it, which is, the domestic manufacturers not thinking about international. You're not thinking big enough. Just what's maybe some suggestions you could give to a smaller brand? So again, we'll go in alphabetical order, or whoever would like to go first, but just sort of, what's some positive takeaways and what's some suggestions for some brands to think about?
Okay. So some positive takeaways from our year, Brandon, is that kind of what you're? Yeah, I think I spoke to it a little earlier, in that it's actually a really good year for anything that sells in a grocery store or any food product that's being consumed at home. And I'm assuming a lot of our attendees, are involved in that sort of business. So it was actually a pretty darn good year if you compare us to other industries. So that's something to feel really good about. With a lot of the products we sell, we had some significant wins in e-commerce. And made up a lot of ground in e-commerce and got a lot of learning in e-commerce. So what I would suggest to any small brands here is, if you don't have your e-commerce or your direct to consumer, what they call DTC game down, you should get on it. And that's for your domestic business and for your international business. Because when you start distributing products through wholesalers, importers, retailers, all of your profit as an emerging brand can just be gobbled up, and you've got nothing left to build your company with. It used to be you had no other choice, but now you can sell and interact directly with your consumer, keep that profit for yourself to feed the company's growth. So learn about e-commerce, learn how you can sell directly to the consumer in addition to your retail distribution. And I think, Catherine, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe Brandon, it's your seminar, there's some opportunities coming up for learning from other brands who've already done that successfully. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. There's a D2C panel with Naturally Bolder the week and a half from now, I believe. That's posted in there.
Yeah. So yes. Get on that, and also learn about how you can apply it to export, because there's a lot of ways you can, and e-commerce is a very nice starting point for export business.
I think for us on that takeaway would be, constant communication with your partners. Your biggest partners, and staying agile to their needs, and not taking for granted like your prize fighter item, however it may be packaged or whatnot, and knowing that that's going to always carry us on down the road. And I think that put people into a room this year talking about what they listened and heard from their customer, and how do we meet what they need right now. And I think we're doing that again right now, is how do we get into the room and figure out what the needs are next. And by having that communication with your best partners and even some of your smallest partners, you do become that trusted source within that category over time, that builds that true partnership. And I think that's what we do, what we did really well last year.
So I would I want to take a minute and kind of divert the conversation to something we haven't talked about, but I feel like is on everybody's minds. And there was obviously a whole lot more that went on this year besides just the pandemic. The Black Lives Matter movement, the gender pay gap. There's a whole lot of politics and all that behind it. And what I'm most proud of Danone for working towards is taking care of their people above all else. And that's physically with, pay increases for frontline workers, paid, like anybody who's quarantined, paid for 2 weeks, not even a question. And we've kicked off greater diversity and inclusion programs and sharing company-wide, just connecting people to people, because we all lost so much from the pandemic, but also I feel like we all were opened up, our eyes were opened up to so many things that we needed to address that in our day-to-day lives, we were okay ignoring. And this kind of forced us to just challenge all of those norms across tons of platforms. And, as a working mom of 3 kids, it was a hard year, but what I hope came out of it for my whole company is they can see that we all can do this in different circumstances that we weren't expecting, and no, it's not ideal, but we can be good no matter what. And I think especially as a woman, that one's a little bit harder than normal, when you have kids around and when you have family priorities and, maybe a sick parent, or there's all this kind of stuff that it was easier for us to keep separate before. And now that most all of us are either still working from home or worked from home for a majority of the year, it forced us to kind of flex. And having a company that really supported the mental health of all of the employees, I think really set a high bar for what we can look forward to in the future. And I think it was a great success and a great win for just the whole country to just start looking at these things that we've kind of maybe pushed under the rug for too long. And I'm really looking forward to continuing conversations in those areas, because I think they're really important things to address. And, everyone talks about work-life home balance. But there is no balance. It's your whole life, and you do a certain part of it, the day you spend working here, but then you spend a certain part working here, and we're all working all the time on something. And so kind of bringing that to the forefront instead of pretending like our lives are separate was something that I'm at least most proud of our company for putting a whole lot of focus and effort on this year.
Great, thank you. I have one last question for you all, and hopefully it's relatively painless. But it is a theme that's come over Q&A as well as the chat, which is just, do you have if you can share, you're willing to share, do you have a go-to resource for when you're stuck on thinking about something, whether it's a trade publication or, I know a lot of people that don't have business mentors, which I started with a business mentor. I think that's a good idea for everybody to have, but is there just sort of a go-to place that you like to go if you're stuck? I think that's really the spirit of the question, is just, if I'm stuck and I'm not sure how to get out of it, is there a specific tool or again, a trade publication that you turn to, or maybe sometimes it's just Headspace. I don't know. But it is a question that's come up multiple times in the chat about the tools of the trade that you may use.
Well, my wife works in the business with us here, and I definitely would say she's number one when it comes to, that sort of thing, which is nice. Although we do talk about business way too much, sometimes around the clock. The other one is, I just joined a Renaissance Executive Forum, which is a CEO's group, a small group where you talk with your peers about business problems. And that's been extremely helpful. I found that great as a business owner, to have a board of directors I can turn to has been really, really useful. So those are what stand out for me.
It's interesting about, like, kind of mentioned publication. I think, one of the places that used to feed so much soul and create so much collaboration within, our segment were different, like, trade shows and whatnot, where you could see what others are doing, see what you're doing, talk with so many of your customers in a very short period of time. And I think with some of that gone right now, you're right. Several people are looking for where do I pull that in? And yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, from food service, Nation's Restaurant News and some of those type of topics. And, on the retail side, like Deli Watch and whatnot as well, are, a couple publications that we look at, as well as like, ID or International Deli, IDDBA publications as well, that, kind of focus on that perimeter aspect of the retail business, at least where we go.
Great. Thank you, Noel.
I don't have too much to add, just the fact that working remotely has forced us to find other ways and other resources. Because if you're used to working in a big office setting, you have all of that knowledge kind of at your fingertips, because on the third floor this guy sits here, he knows that, and you know where to go for what you need. And I think it forced us to kind of look at other avenues of getting that information. And also something that's probably a little more unique to my company because of its size is how we can ask for retailer data to come back to us. So we actually ask the Walmarts, the Krogers, the Targets of the world to send us what they're seeing on store shelves, and it helps us make our better decisions, I guess. So just utilizing all the data and resources that we have to try to predict what the customers are going to need. And I think that's really what we try to do, to get as much intel from those major retailers to kind of help us strategize where we're going to go next with things.
On that note, thanks, Noel, for mentioning trade data. Here at the World Trade Center Denver, we have trade databases that we utilize to provide guidance to our members. I encourage everyone to take a look at our services as well. We have trade services where we can assist in your import-export challenges, help mitigate risks, help you find markets to expand to in exporting, or locate for importing. And we also have a help desk. We have a hotline you can call. So please do, if you are facing any immediate challenges, take a look at our website. We've got unlimited resources and a network of service providers that's extensive, where we can help connect you to the specific provider who can help you expand and improve your trade. Here at the World Trade Center, our mission is to make sure that we are facilitating trade in and out of our region. So we want to make sure that we can provide you any assistance you need. We're always here to help. And Brandon, back to you.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank Chris, Zach, and Noel for taking time out of their day, and everybody in the audience for joining us. Hopefully this has been a very helpful conversation. I know it has been for me as somebody that's in it. I always learn something new every time I do one of these, but I know Chris, Zach, and Noel are extremely busy, and I can't thank them again enough for having us. I can't thank the World Trade Center Denver enough for having us, and I appreciate for the opportunity to moderate. And back to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Brandon. What a superb moderator. You did a fantastic job. Thank you so much to our panel. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. We hope you walked away with lots of useful insights and tidbits. I would also like to do a shout out to any woman-owned businesses, or any veteran-owned businesses, or any minority-owned businesses. Please do get in touch with us here. I'll give you an email address that's easy to remember, and we can pop into the chat. Please do let us know of your operations and what business you're in. We have a grant opportunity for businesses that are minority-owned, veteran-owned, and woman-owned. And we have some qualifiers that we'll ask you for. And then we'd love to get you into the mix to qualify for a grant that we have working with the Business of Minority-Owned Businesses, the Bureau of Minority-Owned Businesses here in Denver. Additionally, I'd just like to remind everyone to check out our membership options, our service options, and then our classes and trainings that are coming up in the next month. We did mention sustainability quite a few times here today. We have a sustainability series in 2021, and our next sustainability series event is going to be surrounding circular economics. So talking about reduction of waste, talking about increasing efficiencies, and talking about forward-thinking supply chains. So definitely make sure that you tune in and come back and see us soon. And don't forget us whenever you are facing one of these challenges in international trade. We have a help desk, and we're looking forward to engaging with you. So thanks to everyone in the World Trade Center staff who is helping us today put on this panel. And thank you again to our panelists, and hoping everyone in the audience stays safe this weekend in the Snowmageddon. Stay well, and wishing you good fortune and easy trading in 2021. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you all.